that.
Are we live yet? No, we're not live yet. What's
So
happening?
it told me a notification that you were.
It's not telling. Oh, we are live. What do you know? I just wasn't paying attention. So that was awkward. All right, let's start with that. We're back. It's Thursday. It's 1 o'clock.
We're back to
Gotta
our
roll with the
commercial
punches here.
Always
It's
punches,
30 with Karen and Justin. We're here again. We've got a wicked guest today. I've got David Armiss, otherwise known as the Physio Pharaoh. This guy is awesome. You know what's funny about life is that sometimes you just meet great people in your day-to-day kind of travels in the world. And I go to MOVATI, the gym. And is there anything else called MOVATI? I don't know why I just said that. I go to MOVATI, the gym. And so at MOVATI, David a couple times was kind enough to come up and say, hey, maybe you should do this a little differently. And, you know, I think I've even asked him a couple questions here and there, and that kind of spiraled into a pretty cool relationship of a guy that is just awesome at what he does very clearly. And interestingly cares about the people around him that he's working with, which is the other part that I love about him. You can tell by how he works with people and how passionate he is about what he does. And then what's hilarious is we've probably had conversation after conversation after conversation that could be podcasts.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
And they're just not. They're in the gym.
Yeah.
So
Hey, what happens in the gym stays in the gym.
That's right. So we've decided to actually bring the thing to here so we can share it with you. So David, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate you coming out. I want to start one of the things I love doing with people like yourself, especially in your industry, is a little bit of myth busting.
Okay. Love busting myths, especially when they're popular and they're stupid.
Yeah, I know. And so what I wanted to start with was the idea about lifting weights.
Yeah.
I think there's still a lot of people that think that if they lift too much weights, they're going to get too big. It's not going to be what they like. You know, lifting weights is a good thing, right?
100%. There's nothing in health that's going to benefit your body like resistance training. Right. And there's a million different ways you can do it. You could lift heavy, you could lift moderate, you could lift light. There's there's so many variables to how you lift the weight, what direction you lift it, how fast you lift it, how many times you lift it. It all depends on what you want to get out of doing it. And for the love of God, please put it back where it belongs.
Looking like a true gym guy. I'm with you, bro. I get it.
Dude, the other day I found a pair of 50s where the 10s go, and I'm like, seriously?
How does that even fit there?
When you put a dumbbell down and it's about triple the size of the one next to it, you were probably in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is your pet peeve. Tell us how you really feel about this.
Oh, you don't want that. Is this podcast rated R?
No, we're not doing that.
Okay, that's that.
So let's slide over to like a little bit of mobility. I think a lot of people then start lifting weight, and the next thing is, okay, well, now I forget to stretch.
So
talk to me about that.
One of the things I tell people is mobility is movement. Okay. Well, lifting weights, all the crap that you do on the gym floor and whatever, that's just heavyweight mobility. That's all it is. So if you're not moving right, you're not lifting right. And then, it might not hurt in the moment, but 10 million reps later, you've got a bum shoulder or a busted knee or some other nonsense, right? So everybody thinks they know how to move, but actually nobody knows how to move. That no one knows how to move because you have to be taught, right? You didn't just magically learn to talk. You heard the words, and then eventually your brain started learning and understanding how to communicate, and then now you know how to talk. You ride a bicycle. You see somebody riding a bike, you don't hop on and ride. You hop on and crash, and then you have to learn how to ride the bike.
Yes, right.
Walking, same thing. And actually, no one has ever been taught how to walk, and a lot of people screw it up. That's why they end up with, busted knees later, or messed up ankles, or messed up backs, or something like that.
So there is a right way to walk.
There is, in theory, actually, technically, a right way to walk. But it's not like, do this, do this, do this, do this. It's actually, your brain will figure it out pretty well. if you already learn to move properly. And I'll never forget one time, there was a guy here, he works out here like almost every day. I see him in the afternoons, and he was on the turf. I was doing my mobility, and he's walking around. And he's walking kind of funny, like he's like stepping weird and like taking these really awkward steps, whatever. And I told him, I'm like, hey, bro, actually, I got to say his name was Justin, but it wasn't you. Anyway,
Fair enough.
I'm like, Justin, what are you doing? And he goes, oh, so like he had read something online about like walking and stuff like that, right? Because I think he was getting knee pain or something along those lines. I said, okay, can I give you like just 2 things to do and you'll walk like no problem. Your body will just auto sort it out. He goes, sure. I'm like, okay, just spread your toes and breathe diaphragmatically. Breathe through your belly. He's like, what? I'm like, just stop thinking. Spread your toes and breathe. He goes, okay. So he spreads his toes and starts breathing, puts his hand on his belly. I'm like, do diaphragmatic breathing. Learn to breathe that way. And he takes like a couple of steps and he goes, dude, what the fuck? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, are you serious? Does that actually seriously just work? I'm like, yeah. And he does like 2 laps and he goes, why is that so easy? I'm like, because your brain kind of already knows how to walk. If you focus on too many things on walking, you're going to mess it all up. Just spread your toes and breathe. And his glutes fired how he wanted. His back was moving how he wanted. His shoulders were moving how he wanted. It just sorted everything out. And it was the funniest, like, oh my God moment I've ever seen with it, because it was so simple. And so he learned how to walk in 2 steps. It was pretty good.
And that carries over to a lot of movements though, because for example, like, I mean, you and I were working out the other day, a couple weeks ago in the gym, and you took me into this is going to sound really bad, but you took me into the private room and, and you showed me a couple things. No, just leave it. Just walk away. And you showed me a couple things for my shoulder.
Yeah.
And it was just such a simple movement and on a very light weight. And I'm a pretty big dude and I like lifting heavy things. And I, I did this movement, and like within days of me doing this pretty regularly, pain out of my shoulder gone.
Yeah. The funny thing with shoulders, I like to explain shoulders to people like it's a rock concert. The scapula, your shoulder blade, is the stage, and then the shoulder joint is the band. So if the stage isn't doing things right, then the band can't play. Or if the band is being too rowdy, then the stage gets messed up. So
right. That's interesting.
That's exactly how a shoulder functions.
That's like a 5-year-old's explanation, and it works perfectly for me.
It works perfectly for everybody. So when you were telling me your list of symptoms, based on what you were telling me, I kind of guessed. I was like, okay, that sounds like his shoulder blade isn't rotating properly. So then I had you do that move. I remember it was the cable one behind you, and then you were doing like a fly while you were holding. Yeah. So that move forces your shoulder blade to rotate. If it doesn't want to rotate, it's going to freaking rotate. And then you felt it within just 2 sets. You could get it rotating, and then everything suddenly unlocked, because the way you're loading, you know what? I'm going to try and pull a picture up. I don't know if you can broadcast photos, but
I was going to say, if you can share your screen, are you on a computer or what are you doing?
No, I'm on my phone, but actually, you know what? Yeah, let me, okay, this is going to be new for me.
We're diving into stuff we've never really done on the podcast before. So if you want to share your screen, we can make that happen.
Great. Okay. Stop.
Very spur of the moment. Eh?
Yeah. Why not? Who knows?
I just
love it.
I just got to make sure.
I'm going to look it up on the computer over here that I'm sitting in front of, and then I'll just turn my phone around and you can see it there. Don't need that. Don't need that. Why did all these windows open?
Why is he called the Pharaoh?
Because I'm Egyptian.
Egyptian. That was the first thing. Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
he's also really good at what he does. So, you put him up on a pedestal, which I think is the cool thing. So
my page.
This muscle here. Serratus anterior. How do I flip my camera? Okay. Nope. The background's going to screw it up. Okay,
yeah, we're getting real complicated. We might not have to do
this.
There's
a muscle that sits between your shoulder blade and your ribs. It's called serratus anterior. And then what it's supposed to do is it holds your shoulder blade flush to your rib cage. So like if that's your rib cage and that's your shoulder blade, it's between them and it holds it there. And it helps it glide around. So its general direction of force is to the front of your body. Right. So I loaded you from the back, forcing you to push to the front, which makes that muscle turn on. And then through that rotation, that's the only muscle that can stabilize you that way. Like that's literally it. So even if your brain's got no concept on how to use that muscle, it's going to be forced to turn on. And we got there. It turned on, and then it released everything else that was trying to do the job of it, and then you didn't have pain anymore.
Huh.
It was actually really cool. And it was a surprising moment. Like it actually happened pretty instantly. Now, granted, it took some time over the next few days to continue to work on
To
it to get,
manipulate. Yeah.
to get the pain completely gone. But my shoulder, which I was dealing with like all up into my head, all the way down to my shoulder, and it all just flushed away basically in the space of a few days, which was really
If
amazing.
you want to try and feel that muscle, put your arms overhead and
Okay,
keep
we're gonna
them
do this now.
straight, and then
We're doing it.
shrug down and shrug forward. You'll feel a pull at your
Oh,
wrist.
yes.
That's your serratus center.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So if you didn't do that while we were doing this, try it now.
Try
It
it
was
out.
really cool. You got
Straight
to like
arms
shrug your
overhead.
shoulders back down once you're
Shrug
up,
down and
Yeah.
shrug down and forward. Feel it?
and then forward,
Right along the
down.
rib.
and forward. Yeah.
It's kind of tough to get it, but if you can get that, that's a very important muscle.
Mm.
I'm going to say probably about a third to a half of shoulder problems I've encountered involved some dysfunction of that muscle.
That's pretty awesome. And listen, it worked for me, and I can't imagine. So if you need advice on shoulders, you need to get in touch with Dave first of all.
Mhm.
So let's talk about.
I have a question.
ahead.
Can I
Yeah.
have a question? So I have a fully torn muscle here.
Mhm.
And I got it from rowing. And
Mhm.
so how do I do? They suggested an operation of a new shoulder, and then they said you can never row again. So I said no, forget it.
Yeah.
And so what I find is that the muscles around it have built up, so now my shoulder is quite strong actually. It's still painful, but
Yeah. So what's the question with it?
the question is, so can you resolve that situation?
Without
So
surgery, I guess is your
I
question.
need to know what tore, and then if it was a complete tearing, like it came right off the bone, or if it's just a partial.
No,
And
it's a complete, and
Was-
they're in shock about it because I move it so much and I can move it up and down.
Oh, we've lost him.
Oh, did we
Hang
lose
on.
you?
He's frozen. Hang on. Give it a second. It always works itself out. This is always the fun aspect of live performance.
Yeah,
Here we go.
hey,
You're
there we
back.
go.
You're
Okay,
back.
we're
Here
back.
we go.
Do you remember what muscle it was?
I'd have to look it up. It was years ago that it happened, and so I'll have to look it
Pointed
up.
over here.
Mhm.
Does the word supraspinatus ring a bell?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the other muscle that's like one of the most, I would argue it's the most important rotator cuff muscle. It actually goes along top of the
Yeah.
shoulder blade under your trunk. So if it's still got some partial attachment, you can fix it without surgery. If it's completely torn off, there are surgeries where they can reattach it without having to replace the shoulder. So I don't know what uninformed orthopedic surgeon you talk to, but it is what it is. So that being said, without it, you can compensate your way into shoulder function, but you have to train the other muscles to replace it a lot because they're going to have to work a lot harder. So there's two other rotator cuff muscles you got to work on. That's the infraspinatus and the teres minor. And then there's three other bigger muscles that are major movers that you got to work on. So there's the lateral deltoid, the rear deltoid, and the tricep. Those are all going to have to take over the job for that supraspinatus. But that being said, to cycle all the way back to your question, that's essentially like if you did nothing to the muscle and you just left it injured as it is, those would be the ones that you'd want to strengthen in order to work around.
Yeah.
And I know lots of people.
I find she has a hard time getting her shoulder, like her arm up above her shoulder.
Yeah,
right? That's a huge piece.
That's a very common one. Supraspinatus is really involved in getting overhead. But if the other ones get strong enough, you can kind of get there. It's never really going to be the same. But I would look at surgeries that involve reattaching.
Okay.
Because that is a thing. So like theoretically what they would do, it depends on the state of the muscle. So if it's totally torn off and it's retracted, they might not be able to reattach it because if the muscle has retracted, it might be too short. So if they can lengthen it, or they could take a donation tendon from somewhere else and lengthen the tendon back to its original attachment, they can stick it back on and then you do the right rehab. I would also say maybe some PRP to help like really glue it in place. PRP is platelet-rich plasma. And then, once that's healed.
You know what, David? I know exactly what that is because I did probably a good 5 to 8 shots at very high price. And it worked for a while.
Yeah. So the thing with PRP though is a lot of clinics do it wrong, and a lot of people end up getting no results, and then they're like, "Oh, this is bullshit," and then it's just like, no, it actually wasn't done correctly. Because the thing with PRP is it has to go right to the site of damage. If it doesn't get there, it's like if you cut yourself on your face and put a Band-Aid on your arm. Yeah, it's not going to do anything, right?
No.
So whenever you get PRP done, I always say make sure that it's ultrasound guided so it can actually get to the actual site of the problem. Because I hate to say it, but some physicians are like, oh, well, I know exactly where the tear is. Well, here's the thing. Your eyeballs aren't x-rays, so just use the freaking machine.
Unless you're working with
do a
Superman.
footnote here.
Yeah.
The doctor that did it was Egyptian.
Did he do it right? You better have done it right, or I'm going to have to find it. What was his name?
I have to look it up.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, PRP is good. I love
Anyway,
it.
on to the next question, Justin.
Yeah. So working towards, talking about things like, recovery and mobility, we did sort of mention stretching a little bit. Is there a preferred routine, not routine necessarily, but a preferred timing for stretching before, after? Is it important at all? Do we need to stretch, or what are the things we should be doing instead of just your static, stretches that we normally get taught as we're kids, what do we need to be doing?
So to answer it all in like the most logical
and
way.
add to that layer, because we're both my mom and I are both older, as we age.
Okay, yeah. So actually, and I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to talk about that too. So to answer the most simple question, yes, it's important. You have to do it. And the logic behind that is, what are your muscles doing when they contract? They're shrinking. Muscles love to shrink. Joints absolutely hate that. They hate getting tightened up into small ranges of motion. That's how you grind down cartilage. That's how you end up with tendonitis. That's how you get arthritis and osteoarthritis and all that crap. Barring anything that's autoimmune, like rheumatoid, whatever, that's how all that stuff happens. So what we got to do is decrease the tension through those muscles, because they are actually mechanical organs, bring them back to their full lengths so they can actually function better and create more power. And then the joints move through better ranges of motion, so they're happier because the tissue is not just getting grinded down through a small range of motion. So that's why stretching is super important. Then your other question with the timing, when is it best? So it's actually best to do it before and after, because you do it before to condition your ranges of motion and get warmed up and ready for the lift. And then you do it after to relieve all the excess tension that you've built up from the exercise, right? And then in that regard, what you're doing is basically, it's exactly that. You're getting your body ready for the workout, because let's be real, if you're working out, it's an intense load on the body. Like unless you're just working on like some small stuff like stability, or maybe your workout is just the range of motion conditioning in the stretches, then that's perfectly fine. But like if you're lifting weights, you're running, you're swimming, you're whatever, you want to get your body ready for it, and then bring the body back down to a state of rest afterwards, right? So then when you're doing the before, the whole point is not just the muscles and the tissues that are involved in the movement, but it's also the nervous system. You're showing your brain, these are the ranges of motion that all my joints can go through today without getting hurt. Because brains are dumb.
Yeah.
They forget that like that. And the easy analogy of how that's true is, I'm sure all of us have that friend that went and started working out and was like, oh, I used to lift this. And then they went and did it again. And then next thing you know, they threw their back out or some nonsense, right?
Yeah.
So brains forget very quickly what their available ranges of motion and strengths and powers are. So when you work on that beforehand, you're literally showing your nervous system, this is what's going to work today. This is what we have available, and this is how we can access it. And then afterwards, so those warm-ups are always dynamic. That's where you're stretching and moving. You're not just holding a stretch, because your muscles aren't in a proper state to do that yet. I'll get into the detail on that one in a second. Afterwards is where you would stretch and hold, because you got to get the muscle to let go. And that takes time to get it to relax and let itself go back to length. So at the beginning, you're doing dynamic stretching because there's something in muscles called the Golgi tendon reflex, which you've all seen if you've ever gone to the doctor and they've tapped your knee and your knee twitches your quad. That's that reflex. So if you just go into a stretch without warming up, you're going to trigger those reflexes. So they're going to tighten your muscles early, and you might not actually get to the ranges that you originally have available, or you could potentially strain something. So when you're stretching beforehand, you stretch and move. So you're like going into the stretch and then easing out, and then you go a little bit deeper and then ease out. That's the most basic way to do it, right? And then the easiest way to remember how to stretch a muscle is whatever direction it moves you, pull it the other way. Super simple.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Now with aging, this one's actually kind of interesting because with aging, one of the things I always recommend, and actually this isn't really age specific, is you can actually use resistance training to condition not just the muscles, but also the tissues that hold you together, your fascia, your tendons, your ligaments, your cartilage, your bones. That way of lifting is the super slow motion type of lifting, because all those tissues have cells in them that respond to resistance, but they don't respond the same way as muscles. Muscles will respond just by sheer volume. So you could throw 20 reps at it, 30 reps at it, whatever. A muscle is always going to respond because it's the mechanical thing doing the job. Yeah. But those other tissues, they need to have time with the weight. So if you move much more slowly, like say, for example, a movement that normally takes you 2 or 3 seconds, if you drag it out to 8 or 9 seconds, that lets those other connective tissues have time to feel the weight, get the stimulus, and then get remodeled and get stronger, which is super important for aging populations with the risk of osteoporosis. And it's also super important if you want to lift heavy crap, because lifting heavy crap isn't just your muscles, it's all your structure. So you want your structure to be strong too, right? And that is why steroids are bad, because the muscles get too big too fast and none of those other tissues can keep up. And then you tear a tendon, you rip a bone, you do whatever.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing here then is someone like me, 45 years old, lifting heavy weights, doing a bit of stretching in between, of course, before and after as necessary. But then also maybe once in a while, maybe once a week or once every other week, do a week when I do my same workout, but with a much slower movement.
Yeah.
Now, so would I be now would that be something where I would lower the weight range and then go slower, or how do I go about doing that?
I tell people different brains and bodies are going to respond to different things. So the 2 variables I say, or the 3 variables I say changing there are slow your speed down. So something that, let's say, takes 3 seconds, double it up, make it take 6 seconds. That's a great place to start. And then for sure, you're going to probably only get about half the reps. And then based on that, you can fiddle with your weight. I usually tell people try to keep the same weight and lower the reps first, because that's an easier way to do it, rather than, you have to fiddle around with weights and try to find the right dumbbell or bar or whatever. And then if it's too heavy, then you could either lower the reps again, or you could lower the weights at that point. It's up to you. Yeah. I actually have styled my workouts where all my workouts are those slow motion things. Because
that's what I was just going to ask you. Yeah, because I've seen you work out and you do a ton of slow motion stuff.
Yeah. So I love that stuff because it's so controlled and methodical. It's also training your nervous system on how to move the weight properly and in a controlled way, which is an invaluable skill when you're moving into faster paced stuff like sports. Because you do some sort of sport motion, you're moving quick, let's be real. So if your brain already knows how to control it extremely effectively, going into a high speed motion is going to be easier. But you do still have to train the high speed thing, but there are tools that are good for that. Like, for example, kettlebells. I'm going to go kettlebell, bananas on that one, where if you want a good tool to teach your body how to control a high speed, unbalanced weight, there's nothing in the world that's as good as kettlebells.
Interesting. Yeah. It's funny because I just was scrolling through your social media recently and I saw you posted something. I don't know if it was recent, but I saw a post that said strength starts with control.
Oh yeah.
I love that statement. Actually, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Right. So like how many people are flying through their,
that's all momentum. That's garbage.
I used to do that with my trainer. It was so funny.
I did 20. I did 20.
Go. Really? And how many can you do? Well, I can do as many as you want me to do, but quickly.
Because you're not really moving the weight. It's just flying around.
And then he said to me, he finally got me to slow down. He said, Aaron, you're going too fast. Come on.
Yeah. So there's advantages to both, because the high speed is important because that teaches your brain and body how to produce power at speed, which is necessary. Like, even forget sports. Like, let's say for the sake of argument, you have to react to something. Let's say you're a mother and your baby's doing something, they're going to get hurt. You have to react and catch them or something, right? So that's an important skill to train. But having that control over the body is probably, I would say, the basis of everything else. right? Because if you don't know how to control yourself at a slow motion, how do you control yourself at a high motion, right? Like
Well,
if you
it's
drive
funny.
your car at 10 kilometers an hour and then you go drive it at 100, if you don't know how to handle a car at 10, how do you handle it at 100?
So I'm gonna give you an example,
Mm,
David. It's really interesting because as you get older,
mm,
I would say that I'm maybe not, but I'm an exception to the rule because I'm athletic in some sense, okay?
yeah.
Because even though I'm aging, I
Mm,
still I walk a lot, I do a lot of things. Anyway,
mm,
but I would say that a lot of people lose their balance and
mm,
they don't know how to fall.
mm,
And
Mm.
so the reason they don't know how to fall is because of not, first of all, not working out. That's the
mm,
first thing. And the second thing I think is because of the fact that if they do work out, they just do it quickly because you see
mm.
when I go into the women's gym, you see these women running around doing all their exercises, but very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, the theory. It's very
So
Yeah.
I would argue on that point, though, a couple of things. I would say, I'm not saying this just about women because I've seen dudes do this too. There's a lot of people out there that could probably be pushing more weight than they think.
Uh, Potentially, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that in a way where it's like, when if I picked up this and I was just like this, I
Mhm.
mean, I know I'm moving. I get it. I get that I'm out there moving, but is there value in literally doing 40 reps of just this with no weight?
Uh, yeah. On the most technically correct aspect, yes, because it's still better than zero.
You're moving your body, so I get the idea of that.
Yeah, and that kind of plays into the value of calisthenics, right? So like
Okay.
that, all you have is your body weight at that point, but
Right.
that's limited because all you have is your body weight.
Yeah.
And I guess to cycle back to your original question, yeah, something is better than nothing, but you should take a look at your something and be like, is this something going to actually take me to where I want to go? And so let's take your example. If you do, 40 reps with only 5 pounds, what's that going to equate to if you wanted to go heavier? There's a bit of a balance, right? And actually, that reminds me of one time we were talking. It was so one of the girls that used to be a trainer here. She was trying to get her one-time max on a bench press, right? And I had learned through one of my certifications about something called potentiation, which is where you get your brain and body ready for something more intense than what you're going to do, and then you do the thing you wanted to do, and that ends up feeling easier. So she was trying to bench. I think it was a plate on each side, so that's like 135 pounds, and she just couldn't get it. So I was like, okay. Like she had me spotting her, and I said, "Can we try an experiment? I bet we can get you to do this." She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "All right, we're gonna put 175 pounds on the bar." She goes, "What the fuck? How am I gonna lift that?" I'm like, "You're not gonna actually bench it." So I pulled one of the other guys over, and I said, "What we're gonna do? We're both gonna stand on each side, and we're gonna spot you. So we're gonna put the 175 on. You're gonna unrack it and just hold it there, and we're gonna count 10 seconds. Your brain and body are gonna shake." And you're going to be ready for 175 pounds. Then we're going to take that other 40 pounds off, and you're going to bench that 135 like it was literally nothing. And she
And
goes, okay. And so she did it. She put the 175. She held it there. We made her hold for 10 seconds. And then we pulled the 40 pounds off. She benched the 135 3 times. And she was just like, oh my God, what is this? This is crazy, blah, 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 blah. So
it's
now the
like
important part of the
Wow,
experiment.
witch's
that's an
magic.
interesting concept.
Yeah.
Witch's magic.
So the guy who I pulled over, he said, oh, there's another way you could do it. If you take a medicine ball and you smash it into the ground a bunch of times, you can potentiate that way. And I said to him, yeah, you're technically right, but you need force to match force. So
Right.
if he's trying to put out 3 reps of 135 pounds, if you multiply that out, it's 300 and whatever pounds worth of total amount of weight you're going to move.
Right.
If
Yep.
you're going to do that with a 10-pound ball, you'd have to slam it into the ground about 3,000 times. So you
Right.
want to stand there and do 3,000 reps of ball smashes? Okay, go for it. But that's a pain in the ass. So to cycle back to your question of, is there value to that? The answer is yes, but is that value something that's going to make sense in the time frame that you want, right?
Right. Right.
And I did the same
But
thing with a
at
couple of
least,
guys.
but at least, so I have a question for you, David. If you're so involved with people and in doing this,
Mm.
what is the percentage of people that lose their muscle mass and at what age?
So for all intents and purposes, on a purely physiological, the most technical answer to that, as soon as you're not using your muscle, your body's trying to figure out how to break it down because it's a high metabolism tissue. So if you're not using it, it says, I don't need to maintain this, right? Now, that being said, there's no real number that I could give you based on age or gender or whatever, because it's going to depend on the person, right? Some people will maintain muscle for a lot longer, other people don't. It's really individualized. So that's why I tell people, you want to move your whole life. That's how we were designed. That's how we evolved, right? We only have gyms and stuff now because of the lifestyles that we lead. But if you go and you look at, human beings from 20,000 years ago, there was no such thing as that. They were just lifting rocks and moving logs and cows and whatever, right? So, I mean, you can make a gym out of that. You want to go bench press a cow and then count how many times you yeah, I deadlifted a possum today. It's like, what? Okay. So the thing I tell people is your body's always trying to be the most metabolically efficient. And lots of muscle is not metabolically efficient because it takes a lot of energy to maintain it. But we know that that's healthy because it keeps your body fat low. It keeps your heart strong. Muscle is the organ of longevity. You look at people who exercise regularly versus those who don't, the average ages are completely different at their lifespans, right? So I guess what I would say is, make your life based on movement, right? Move so you can keep on groove.
Yeah, it's funny because I think we've even talked about this at the gym a few times where like one of the things that was told to me a while back at some point was, the first thing that tends to precipitate bad things in your world is when you can no longer go up and down stairs and when you can no longer get up and down out of a chair, which sounds like such a simple thing. But if you lose the ability to stand up from a chair, your world changes immensely. Right. Whether it's just lack of muscle or weight issues or whatever else or other issues relating to knees and hips and bones, and so that's the thing that terrifies me the most as a whole. That's kind of like the fear of like, that stuff. Sort of.
But Justin, you see that, you'll never get to that point because you're aware of it.
Which is why I go to the gym.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to keep up with my kids and I want to be able to do this and
it's really interesting because this may sound so funny, even getting up from the toilet, right? When you're in that status,
exactly.
It's terrible because you watch people and how heavy they are, or how light they are, and they just don't have any muscle, and that's interesting because that's why last week when I saw you, I just kept walking because even though I hurt my hip, because I fell, David, and even though I hurt my hip, I kept walking and it's perfectly fine now. It's perfect because I did exercises and it was great.
Well, that's one thing I've learned from our physiotherapist that we've used in the past where, Peter has said to us, like, as much as I can do the movements and the things and the osteo stuff or that we do, and some of the chiropractic stuff and whatever else we've had, even on my neck, I had acupuncture and so on and so forth. Right. And so all of that said, his mindset is always like, with that injury, you really want to work on strengthening everything around that injury to help rebuild the injury in and of itself.
Yeah. I've always said, I had this question come up, kind of a similar one from a kid that I was training back when I was still at Good Life. This was like 2017 or 18. And so we were working on something, I think it was chest press. And he was asking, it was very lightweight that we were doing, and it was hard. And he was like, oh, how much should I be able to do? And that was a great question because I said to him, okay, my shoulds are you should be able to control your body weight as an absolute minimum. So you should be able to do a push-up. You should be able to do a sit-up. Yeah. You should be able to get up off the floor. You should be able to do maybe a pull-up. There's another should that I say that's kind of a difficult one. So we said get up off the floor as like an absolute basic. But if we want to talk about like how strong legs really should be, you should be able to do a one-legged lunge. Because each leg should be able to support your body weight. Yeah. So that's a pistol squat. So it's basically you're on one leg and you squat down and you come back up.
It's like your legs are spread apart and you lunge forward with one leg.
Oh yeah. No. Yeah. Okay.
You should be able to do that.
That was good. I like that.
And then if you want to take it up a notch for the legs, you could say that at a more high performance level, you should be able to do a pistol squat, which is single leg. You're just standing there. You squat down and come back up on just one leg. Now that one's very mobility and balance based, so I don't necessarily call that as a bare minimum. So my bare minimums are you should be able to sit up, push up, pull up, and get up off the ground.
Those are good minimums. I like being able to get back up when I fall down.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
And actually, to that point, I remember there was a guy, same good life, that I did a consultation with. He was 88, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And I always used to see him. He would just come in and do cardio. He would do a little bit of walking on the treadmill. He would do some rowing on the rowers. And then I can't remember, a little bit of bike. And then that was it. And one day we got to talking. He came up and he asked me about my qualifications because he overheard me training. And he was like, you sounded really smart and blah, blah, blah. So I told him about myself and everything. And he was a physician. A retired physician. And so we got to talking, and then I asked him if he wanted to do a consultation. He was like, sure. So we got together. And my first question to him, I was like, so why don't I ever see you do any weights? And he said to me, he's like, oh, they scare me. I'm like, okay, would they not scare you if someone taught you? And he goes, I don't think I need to. And I said, okay, forget the weights. You're 88. Tell me your most important thing in life right now. His answer was not die. And I said, okay, that's fair enough. That's a pretty good goal to have. And I asked him, I said, okay, if you slipped and fell, do you think you would die? And he goes, for sure I would die. I'd break something. There's no way I'd catch myself, whatever. I said, okay. So do you think if you got stronger, then if you slipped and fell, you wouldn't die? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, okay. Do you feel like you've gotten stronger through just the cardio that you've been doing? And he goes, well, I can walk a lot more. And I said, okay, but you just told me that you still feel like now, if you slip and fall, you would die. And he goes, yeah. And I said, so I guess the answer is no. He goes, no. And I said, do you think weights would get you there? And then he stopped and he goes, okay, show me some weights. And I was like, all right, let's go try some weights. So I taught him a couple of things. I showed him squats, overhead press, rows, and something else. Something for the abs. I can't remember what. And then I gave him a little routine, and then that's what he did. He would come in one day, do his cardio, another day, do his weight routine. He would just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And like a month later, he came up to me, he goes, I feel so much better. I can climb the stairs at home like it's nothing. I'm doing this with my grandkids, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, do you want to do more weights? He goes, no, I like the ones that I have. I want to keep it. I'm like, okay, that's good. Keep going.
That's funny.
But it was great.
So that's a good segue really quickly into something else that I think we can bring up really quickly before we go, because we're kind of pushing up against time, but I am enjoying this conversation, so I don't want to limit it too much.
That means we got to have a round two.
Yeah, maybe we should. Talk to me a little bit about cardio, because I know for me, again, I go off of things that I've learned and heard over the years, because I'm wise, and I read things and I learn things the best I can, and I listen to people like you, and I get my even TikTok. As much as I hate some of it, if I can vet the people and really get some good information, I like that sort of thing. And one of the things that was said to me was not to never do cardio, but the idea that cardio can diminish your gains in the weight side of things and so on and so forth. So, and I like being a little bigger, so I don't like that. But also that lifting heavy weights, or lifting weights in general, when you're doing it right, that's a form of cardio. I mean, like you're breathing and I'm sweating and I'm breathing, I'm huffing and puffing when I'm doing that stuff. Yeah. So where does the standing on a treadmill or a bike or whatever that other stuff you can do, where does that fit into the overall equation of things?
Yeah. So the first thing I say, cardio is training your heart and blood vessels and lungs, because that's the stuff that's sending the oxygen you breathe in to your muscles and the nutrients that you digest to your muscles so that they can do their job. So obviously those parts of the body also need their exercise. So you're absolutely right. Lifting weights is going to give you a little bit of cardio. You're huffing and puffing and everything. But to target that, you can do that separately. That being said, the machines that you see on the cardio deck with, the stairs and the bikes and the treadmills, I've never once wasted a training session on my clients to go do that, because that's easy stuff. They don't need to waste $150 an hour with me to go do it. Anybody can figure it out. Go have fun. To me, that stuff's boring as hell. There's way more fun ways that you can have cardio. And I do that by setting up weight circuits. So you get like 3 or 4 different exercises. Don't be a dickhead and take 3 or 4 machines. Set them in one place and, or at least share if you need multiple machines. And then just go after it. Go in that circuit, do your 10 reps on one. Go to the next one. Go to the next one. Take your break. That will give you cardio. You'll be huffing and puffing like a champ. Yes. And Justin, I don't know if you've ever seen me doing my kettlebells. I'm going to get back on the kettlebell train here. Holy God in heaven. You get into kettlebells, you are going to be not only tossing some insanely cool looking weights, but the cardio from that is just a whole other level, because it's not just training the heart and blood vessels and lungs, but it's also power. So you're learning how to create force at speed. And then that is also training not just your joints and your mechanics and your muscles, but it's also training your nervous system. How do you control those weights? So now we've come full circle into how you can really take advantage of resistance training. So you actually, if you never went on any of those cardio machines and you just did stuff like weight circuits, you'd be a fucking champ. Like, you'd be strong as heck. You'd be able to handle, pretty much anything life would throw at you. And I say, to me, that's the more fun way of doing things. It's more variety. You're not just, standing there like a goof, just walking for like 20 minutes and not actually going anywhere or whatever. But you know what? The thing I tell people is I never want to discourage them from something like that, because if that's what you like, then that's what you like. Like, there's a girl that was on our team that all her cardio was the stairs, and she loved it because she got to read her book or listen to an audiobook at the same time. So good, go get after it. If that's what gets you going, then go get going. My point is that cardio doesn't have to be some boring thing on a treadmill, but it is absolutely necessary, and there's really creative ways that you can get in. Now, in that regard, there's two types of cardio. There's the long distance cardio, and then there's the short-term interval training type of cardio. And the easy way I explain the difference is if you look at the sprinters in the Olympics and the long distance runners, both of them have extremely powerful cardiovascular systems, but they're for two completely different purposes. And you can see that their bodies reflect that.
Their bodies are very different.
Runners,
yes.
They are very lean, very long-term power producing muscles. They don't move a lot of heavy stuff, but they're going to last absolutely forever. And then you look at the short range sprinters, the 100 meter, the 200 meter, they're massive muscles. They're jacked there for that high energy burst, short period of time. Like I said, both are extremely strong cardiovascular systems, totally different purpose. It just depends on what you're looking for. And doing short-term, like interval training cardio doesn't just automatically mean you're going to end up jacked. That's what you get from doing the weightlifting. And to all the ladies out there, don't worry, you're never going to end up looking like all the guys. That's just not physiologically how a female body develops, unless you have some kind of genetic thing that has you producing a lot more testosterone, or if you're taking steroids.
If you're on steroids, there's probably another reason why you're on steroids. And you
Probably
probably want to look like that.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. One last thing, that just on the note of cardio, you and I, the last time I saw you in the gym, you were talking about breathing into different parts of your chest.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, my mind was like blown when you had me doing that, breathing in those ways. And I always knew about, there's obviously the diaphragm breath and then the upper, that kind of thing, but breathing into your back was what freaked me out the most. That you can actually breathe into the back of your lungs individually from the other parts of your, and I'm like, what is that? So explain that a little bit, because that just honestly, it's mind blowing.
So that was actually something I learned in my pre and postpartum certification, where the original teaching of it was teaching women how to understand and control all of their abdominal muscles, their pelvic floor, and their diaphragm, because that's incredibly, incredibly important for a healthy, happy pregnancy, right? And it speeds up the recovery like you wouldn't believe. Being able to control that stuff will heal that musculature after they give birth so much faster. So basically, essentially, you can use your breathing to unlock almost anything in your torso that's tight. So the essential basic of it is, somewhere along the lines, the brain realized that breathing was really important. And I think it's right about that. I have no proof, but breathing is really important for your life.
Yes.
So if your breathing is restricted, your brain will do literally anything possible to unlock that breath, because you need to breathe. So you saw what I did with you. You were talking about tightness through your upper back. So what we did was we locked up every other place in your body where your body could send air pressure when you inhale. So its only option was to push that air to your upper back through the lungs. And you could feel how those muscles were forced to let go and open up, right? And I'll never forget the look on your face. You were just like what the hell? It was like you just saw God. It was so funny.
It was weird. It was weird.
Yeah. It was cool.
Don't realize that you have that much control.
Yeah, it's hard to develop if you're not like experienced in it. So usually what I tell people is, first, get good at diaphragmatic breathing, because most people are chest breathers in the first place. So if you get good at diaphragmatic breathing, that's your first way, into that. And then all you got to do is the tight spot, lock up everything else. So like, say, for example, let's take your example. You're tight at the upper back. So I had you pull your shoulders forward so you couldn't breathe to the front. I had you crunch so you couldn't breathe into your abs. And then I had you tighten your sides so you couldn't breathe into your sides. Your only option was for the air pressure to go to your back. And that forced those muscles to open up and unlock, right? And it took a couple of breaths to get there, but you get there.
Yeah. Oh, and it was just the most interesting feeling. There's something to be said for that mind muscle connection, like to be able to actually understand how to control every
Mhm.
part of your body in any given
Mhm.
time, right? That's
Mhm.
interesting. How important is that connection?
You know what? I would say that it's actually extremely important because, especially if you're an active person who likes to lead a lifestyle where, like, you go hiking or you play sports or you do rock climbing or whatever, just
Mhm.
in general, because the better your brain knows what to do and how to control your body, because life out there doesn't care. It's going to throw whatever it wants to at you. You could slip on
Mhm.
ice. You could get hit by an asteroid. You could get, you could be crossing the street and a bus is going to run into you.
You
I'm
could
coming up
fall
with
while snowshoeing. It's
I'm
the
coming.
whole
Yeah,
thing.
I'm coming up with
Which
like
is,
final destination scenarios here. But ultimately, when your brain has a good, strong connection and knows what to do with your body, it's so easy for it to do it. And then that just benefits you in the long run because actually, you could take even just the scenario of working out. Let's say you're doing an exercise and you have one rep that's like kind of off. If you've got good body control, you can fix that rep in the moment versus potentially hurting yourself instead, right?
Mhm.
So the better your brain knows how to control your body, the more in tune with your own capabilities you become. And that's actually really important because if you look at the way our lifestyles are, we're all in our heads. We don't pay attention enough to our bodies. So when you can build that connection back to where your body is and what it's doing, you become a lot more like the animals in the world and you become much more in tune. This is going to sound kind of interesting, but you become more in tune with nature because that's where we originally evolved from. Like humans didn't have this big of a cerebrum, 1 or 2 million years ago, our ancestors or whatever. We evolved into it and we forgot what our bodies are for and what they do. So developed from in the first place. So you
Mm.
unlock that and you become better at everything.
Mm.
And that's kind
Form over weight size.
of what?
Form over weight size.
100%.
Yep.
I actually, and to that point, funny, I remember I was training a lady one time and we were doing something
Sorry,
with her
let me
shoulder.
just also say we're late, but I'm packing in as much as I can here because there's so much information. I'm sorry. We're running a little long. There's just so much here.
Yeah.
So go. Form over weight size.
Yeah, so we were doing something with shoulders, and we were using a cable machine. It was the lightest weight that was on the stack. It was only 5 pounds, and she thought it was really really hard, and she thought she was really weak. I was like, no, it's because I'm making you hold like the proper form. So I said, go ahead, pick any of the biggest guys that are working out right now, and I guarantee you, I'll crush them with the same weight. So she did. She picked the biggest guy. I knew him. I can't remember his name. This was at the gym I used to work at. So I bring him over. I'm like, hey man, so I just want to show my girl. Her name's was Helen. Well, not was. It probably still is. Her name's Helen. So I was like, all right. So I just wanted to show her how getting the right form can sometimes make something incredibly hard. And he was not a small guy. Like he was probably about your size. He was a big, strong dude. So I put the weights
Why,
on and
thank you.
I threw the exact same weight she had. And he went to do the motion. It was an sagittal external rotation. I don't know if you can see my arm here, but like just lifting backwards.
yeah.
Okay. And so it was with two hands, and he was able to go a tiny bit heavier than her. She did 5 pounds, he did the 10 pounder, and he like died after like 2 or 3 reps. He was just like, dude, why is this so freaking hard? And I said, because it's physics. You can use physics to your advantage, and every time you get the chance, do it. Because if you can get the same benefit with 10 pounds as you can with 100 pounds, then just use the freaking 10. Because you have so much more room to grow that way, and
Interesting.
it's better on your body.
Mm.
Wow.
It was so funny. Watch, he was so pissed that he couldn't move. He tried to do the 15 and he couldn't even lift it. I'm like, physics, bro. Physics wins every time.
Okay, range of motion. There's such a thing as too much range of motion in certain exercises. We've
Yes.
had this discussion before because I was doing an
Yeah.
incline bench press and I had my arms going way back here like this, like, and feeling a bit of a stretch in my chest here. And you're like, whoa, no, we don't want to go that far. We need to go to this far. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So the thing with range of motion, what a lot of people don't know is that muscles don't produce the same amount of force at all times. Their force is related to their length. So at their shortest and longest lengths, muscles are at their weakest. So
Right.
if you try to force a muscle to produce the same amount of weight at its middle length, while at its longest, you're going to hurt it. That's just a fact. So what you want to do is operate on that top part of it. So it's almost like it goes up and it comes down and around. It's like a little molehill, right? So you want to operate in that range there and then use mobility to condition that hill to get wider. So that's where the nervous system and the other tissues come in, and that's the benefit. One of the benefits you get from mobility is now you've expanded that force curve so that your muscles can produce power through bigger, better ranges. And then ultimately, the absolute perfect scenario of getting into mobility would be that your muscles can produce more or less the same amount of force from their shortest all the way to their longest ranges that the joints will allow them to do. So that's why working through your ranges of motion is really important. But I always tell people, never try to pull a weight with a stretched muscle, because it's literally not going to produce the same amount of force, and that's how you tear it.
I was going to say, you can hurt yourself that way.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Like,
and I was always thinking, well, someone had said at some point, feeling a bit of a stretch through a movement is actually good because you're stretching the muscle out. But then, I was kind of doing that with you, and you were like, no, that's too far for you. Like, that's way too far down. And I was like, okay. And the idea of, yeah, I get it, because that's a vulnerable spot for me when that weight is way down low like that, and my pecs are stretching out right through here, and it's a really interesting thought, because I always thought the other way around, like you want to try to go as far as you can.
So you're right. You want to go as far as you can within the range of that physiological capability of the muscle. And then separately, you condition those ranges of motion using mobility, right?
Right, exactly.
So that's why they both go hand in hand. That's why they all work together, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's just a separate workout, but eventually bringing you around to be able to get further down in those motions.
Yeah. And then
I was shocked when you were doing a bench press, and I saw you only going basically from here up on a bench. And, I tend to go a little further down when I do my bench press. And I was watching you, and I was like really impressed by that, because you did do quite a heavy, like actually heavier than I can do. And you're a shorter, smaller guy than me, but you're built like crazy, like unbelievable. But anyway,
you do,
listen,
can I ask a question? Do you do a online session at all? Do you do online sessions, or you're not?
Yeah, I can. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a different animal from in person, because in person, like, I can really touch the person and show them, how you want to do a movement or whatever. But that being said, I did a ton of online work during COVID, and I got really creative with stuff. Like, I had some people that had nothing but their body and a few chairs to do workouts, and we were getting there. So to answer your question, yes. It's just some people need to understand that when it comes to doing online workouts, especially if you're doing them at home, the variety of the stuff available is less. You're not necessarily losing anything by doing it that way. Like, it's still good that you're getting after it and doing something. But you can't really get annoyed if the workouts start to feel boring, if your equipment repertoire is limited. And then in that regard, online, I got no problem doing online. Online is fun. It's just a matter of if I have the time.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing here, just to summarize everything, is get a coach to start you off if you're starting a journey.
Yeah, I have one too. Like, I see my chiro. He's the guy that I train with once a month. We go in, and when I do my homework, you might have seen one of my reels recently on Instagram where you were doing.
I was just gonna say, like, I literally was looking at your Instagram, and I was like, oh, you go to somebody, and someone was teaching you things, and I'm like, that's awesome, And so
it's something I've always said, that I'll train with anyone who has something to offer that I don't know and isn't some nonsense crap that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
give me an example of nonsense crap that doesn't make any sense, and we'll get out of here.
Okay, I'll give you a nonsense crap that doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
This one was really stupid. There was a supplement store I used to work at. I'm not going to name anything because I don't want any lawsuits or any bullshit. But, the one guy was trying to tell me. So, for context about how I knew this was crap, when I was in school in Philadelphia doing my master's degree, I did 2.5 years of breast cancer research. So I know a lot about cancer physiology. And he was trying to tell me that he cured his mom's, I can't remember what kind of cancer it was, by giving her coffee enemas. And I was like, bro, just no, I'm not even opening that can of worms. Literally no, because if that was the case, then you've discovered something that the past 100 years worth of scientific research hasn't been able to figure out. So you need to run a case study and show the entire world how to cure cancer. And anyway, long story short, that one's way out in left field. But there are people out there where, they'll come up with something that looks really logical and can seem to make sense, but actually, it's not. And I'm trying to think of something that
the problem we have now is the influencer society.
You just have to go on TikTok and.
Yeah, I was just going to say, exactly. Influencer society teaches you so much garbage.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And a lot of people don't realize that you see that stuff online. That's not what they're training. They're doing proper exercise, probably with a very intelligent coach, and then showing this stuff online as like a way of like just getting clickbait or whatever. Like you look at someone that's doing some nonsense on the internet, I guarantee that's not the nonsense they did in order to get good at that. They did logical stuff first and then use
100%.
that to do nonsense crap.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, well, there you go. So get a coach, work on some weights, do a little cardio with it if you want, but mobility is the biggest thing to underpin all of it, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Yep. This is great. And we will have you back because you are fun and you're easy to talk to and we appreciate you. So
that was a good time.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We will see everybody next week.
And
happy Easter, everyone. It's going to be Easter this weekend. So
happy Easter. Happy Easter.
Enjoy the Easter and don't party too hard.
Eat lots of chocolate.
No.
And then go see David on Monday.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Bye.